morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are watching this fifth episode of Securing the Digital Supply Chain. Today, with us, we have a very well known personality from the Bay Area, Sai Kalur. Sai and I have known each other for quite a few years now. Sai, I will probably not do justice to your background, but could you please give our viewers a little bit of background on where have you worked, what are the roles that you've gone through, your perspective on technology? That would be very helpful.
Thank you, Anirban. You already started off on a very high bar, so it's going to be whatever I say will lower the bar. I've been in this IT industry for many years, and I started off in multiple roles, starting with as a developer, programmer, customer support, architecture, quality assurance, and finally I found my home in data center operations because I'm a strong believer that you stay young when your brain is young, and there's no place in this IT industry where you're active, always thinking other than operations, because you never know when your server is going to go down.
Yes.
And it wasn't as if it wasn't enough. About 6-7 years ago, I decided to take on security under my belt, so that in addition to keeping the servers up, we also have to keep the server secure. So that is what gets me going, keeps me going. Currently, I worked in various companies. Came from India to US in the early 90s, and I worked at the phone company as a developer. Then I worked at PeopleSoft, which got acquired by Oracle, and I stayed there for many years, longer than I would like to stay. But after that, I left and joined a very successful young company at that time. But today it's one of a very fast growing company in the life sciences industry. It's called Viva Systems. I joined them when they were very small, but now it's one of the hottest companies there. I was responsible for running their data center operations, cloud hosting, and ensuring all the servers are up. And I had some security responsibility, because you cannot actually do hosting without having security oversight, because one of the most important things that every customer wants is my service up? Is my data secure? These are the two questions customers want.
Correct.
Correct. Then after a few years at Viva Systems, I decided to change and go into a little bit of engineering software world, and I joined GE in their oil and gas division, where we were building a digital platform for monitoring the oil production at the different wells and getting the data from various. So that opened up a different challenges, where how do you secure data coming from devices that are sitting in probably the most remotest parts of the world.
Correct.
Like oil wells in Siberia or something. How do you get the data? And those data, in those places, you don't have fast internet. So the packets have to be very small, and adding an encryption on the packet would increase the size of the packet. So those are very big challenges we had to deal with. It was an exciting road, but I decided to move on and go back to the life sciences industry. So currently I'm at a company called Signant Health. Signant Health is and we make software that pharmaceutical companies use to do clinical trials of drugs. So I feel really good that whatever I'm doing is actually helping the mankind, especially with COVID with the pandemic that we've been dealing with for the last 2 years. Our software has been used by many companies to run the clinical trials, including the Pfizer vaccine, the Gilead's remdesivir drug. They used our software. So in this here, I am responsible for DevOps, the cloud ops, are the hosting operations, and security operations for all the products that Signant has. That's in my career.
Wonderful. I mean, hearing this, I feel that you've really kind of gone through so many areas where operations, management, security, IT. You have a very different perspective than a lot of people who have specialized for many years on one slice, but it's a different ball game when you get to see so many different areas and put your fingers in so many different pies. It's impressive, very impressive. Thank you very much again, Sai.
Yeah, you're right, because I've been, I would say, very fortunate that I had opportunity to work in various roles. I totally agree with you that if you have been in one role, you could be the expert in that area, but you don't have perspective from how the others. You're actually by working in these various roles like operations, uh, tech support, engineering, quality assurance, various roles. I can, anytime there's an issue, I can actually put my shoes in those roles, in their shoes, and
Correct.
understand what the issues. I can
Correct.
empathize with what issues are there.
Correct. Correct.
In fact,
Correct.
one of the things I always tell myself is the many years that I worked in the customer support on the phone gave me so much people who are on the phone. So when I call airlines for some support,
Correct.
I never get upset because I know what type of work that they have
Correct.
to do.
You feel empathy for the
I
people
have
that you're.
empathy
Yes.
for them. Yeah.
Yes.
So
Exactly. Exactly. Sai, in terms of, because you've had this type of experience, you've also seen the way software is being constructed over the last 10 years change. What are some of your observations in terms of when you were at Viva, when you were at GE and other places? How do you see software changing, the way we are building software changing, and how has it changed if it has?
I think it is, I would say all this software development or anything has life cycles. It could be 10, 20, 50 years, 60 year cycles. You can, depending on the industry you're in. So software initially, when I started, we were mainframe. We were in a PCs, actually,
Yep.
desktops,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
First initial programming job was writing on DBase programming.
Yes.
Way back when. That actually revealed my age.
Oh God.
However, then we went to the mainframe. Mainframe became very big in the late 80s and early 90s. Then after that, the client server came on. So the way you program and the way you, the challenges and the problems that you face with are very different for each of them. The mainframe, everything is running in a monolithic mainframe. There's no, all you have to do is you need a dumb terminal to connect. When the client server came, technology came, now you had added another layer of complexity where the servers are processing the data, but the client is issuing the request. Now that's where the encryption in transit and all those things started coming in.
Correct.
In the prior monolithic mainframe world, I doubt very much if there was any need for anybody in transit at that in those days that seriously.
Correct. Correct.
Then after this one, then the client server where you have the distributed development and distributed execution of code has, then they became more back into the browser-based application. So it keeps going back and forth. Now moving everything, and the clients became less and less important. All you needed was a browser to do that. And that is where currently we are right now. In terms of software development, I think one of the methodologies have changed, and the architectural decisions companies are taking has changed significantly in the last 5 to 10 years. In the past, in the early 90s or early 2000s, every company wanted to build software and build end-to-end solutions and do that.
Yes.
However, is that it's not feasible. Nobody can have the domain knowledge in every area of your where your software needs to function.
Correct.
So that's where the dependence on niche players came in. I could develop a small piece of functionality that you might need it. Instead of you building, because your domain strength could be in area X, whereas mine could be in Y. Instead of me expanding into area X, Y and doing a poor job, I said, okay, let me focus on my area of my expertise and build a robust product. Anything that goes beyond mine, I want to make a call to use, integrate with yours.
Correct.
And that is when the integrations, instead of building this monolithic, huge applications, we started getting into the smaller but integrated applications came. And that is probably going to be in my opinion, that's going to be there for a long term, because now nobody has to worry about having the industry knowledge of every aspect of the software that needs.
Right.
But instead, I focus on my strengths.
Right.
And if I need something, I need some. For example, a good example would be, I'm building a web-based application. Yeah. I wanted to use some authentication mechanism. Instead of me writing an authentication, I could leverage a SSO provider, a third-party company, and federate with them. So that means what I've done is I have focused. I'm able to dedicate my resources on my core business and give away the other things to other players and integrate with them. So integrations are becoming a very crucial role in this current area. And the other aspect that's also coming a lot into is people are realizing more and more that the big companies, the software that you license products, after some time, they start getting so expensive, it starts eating into the margins.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
you have to provide your software to
Yes.
customers at the lowest possible, because you're not the only one, only player in this industry. They could,
Correct.
you could have 10 other people, you have to compete,
Correct.
and your bid has to be the most competitive.
Correct.
And the only way to do it is reduce your dependency on licensed products as well. So that is the reason why open source is coming big time, and it's there. And
Yep.
open source, even though it reduces your cost, it brings its own challenges, which we can talk later.
Yes, man, that's the perfect segue. So since you hit the nail on the head that essentially there are intangible sometimes parameters in an organization, and one of them, as you mentioned, is hey, revenue, our bottom line, our profit margins, all things matter. It's not, everything is not done in a vacuum. They're all interconnected together.
Absolutely.
And in that sense, when we are using all these third-party components, whether they're open source or whatnot, what has been your perspective on the security landscape when we use these third-party components, whether they're open source or even closed source per se? What have you seen as the security threats that have come up?
The threats have all, I would say the threats probably already there, and maybe they have gotten getting much more severe or more voluminous in terms of number of threats we're coming nowadays.
Yes.
But the issues were there always. The only thing that was not there was people's visibility and recognition that this is a problem.
Yes.
I doubt.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
just to give an example in a common person's life is, when we look at the news, you say there's so much of violence now in this world, and I see all this bad stuff in the world. And then my childhood, we didn't have that. It's possible. Sometimes I ask myself, is it really true, or is it because I didn't have the visibility at that time?
Correct.
There was no internet, there was no news, there was no social media.
Correct.
So things might be happening that I'm not made aware. In the same way, in the security space,
Correct.
it's very likely that things were happening in the past.
Correct.
I won't say it's the same level. We probably are not at the same level that we have today. Yes. But the lack of visibility and the recognition that this is happening was not there. So as companies are coming, building much more sensitive applications, I think when we talk a little bit about my industry, you'll understand why I'm saying this. Sensitive applications, whether it be financial or any life sciences or any other areas which are very sensitive data, there is significant amount of leverage that these people who can intrude in you and then try to capture your data.
Yes.
So there are the stakes are much higher for them to come and grab. So that is the reason why it's getting more and more important that you just don't focus on just your house. You have to clean the street.
Correct.
Correct. If you want to talk about it, every time I'm thinking is the way I look at it is, in the past 20 years ago, when I was building monolithic applications, all I had to do is make sure that my application that I built is secure.
Yes. Yes.
Now, when I'm start talking, making calls to third-party companies, other companies, then I said, okay, I have done a good job in securing my walls and my boundary and my application, but what's the guarantee that the other product has done?
Correct.
The third thing that happens is, that's where all these DPAs and the MSA and the contracts that came into the place, legal teams fine-tooth comb, they look at every line of the code, making sure that me as a company, by using your software, I'm protecting my customers.
Correct.
So what really I'm finding now is, especially with the recent couple of things that came in the news, as you all know, is one is the most recent is the Log4j.
Yes.
Is a good example.
Yes.
The other one was the SolarWinds.
Yes.
So what happens is, I may make an agreement with a company X and review all their paperwork, and they provided me all the good things that they have done. Yes. But X could be talking to Y could be talking to Z.
Exactly.
As the supply chain is going farther and farther and farther away, my visibility into my threat landscape is getting, my visibility is getting practically zero, and my threat landscape is expanding significantly. And that is where we are seeing. And a good example is Log4j. Log4j is not something that I wrote, my team, my company did not write, but we used a third-party library.
Correct.
And that had a vulnerability. And the same with any other thing. SolarWinds is a big company but people have installed the software. I'm not trying to badmouth anyone in this example. I'm just using them as an example because they were some of the recent talked about.
Correct. Correct. And
You
this,
rely on someone that someone could call someone else. There could be a small. All it requires is security is only as good as the weakest link.
yes, correct. And I love that example that you use, essentially that you clean your own house, but the street leading up to the house has also got to be clean if you have to provide a good experience for everybody. It's not just one container that you're looking at and that's my domain and that's about it. You have to think a little bit more outside the box in terms of this process. So when we talk, and you're right about this side, that it's not that the problem wasn't there. The problem has been there for a long time. And you're right that visibility and recognition is the main thing that's coming up now, because the hacks have been so high profile and even the government got affected and all that. How do you talk to boards when we talk about these types of things? How do you, how if you were to give advice to a CISO or a VP of security that, hey, when you talk to your C-level execs and your boards and present the information to them, how should they verbalize this? What thought processes should they go through?
I think when you talk to the CISO and the board, the more technical terms you use, the more you lose them.
Yes.
Not because they're not smart, they're extremely smart. Otherwise, they won't be board members.
Yes.
Because their interest, their attention is on a different area, which is how to make the company successful and how to raise more money. And they actually hire smart people in each domain.
Yes.
So when you talk to the board, you have to bring it down to a more real life examples on how do you make them believe you.
Yes.
For example, one good thing would be, there are some things you can do on your own, security things, but there are quite a few industrially recognized certifications that are there, credentials that you can get. Like we have the International Standards Organization, ISO.
Yes.
Or you have your SOC and those things. That is one way where you need to invest and get those. That way you're actually outsourcing your security readiness and auditing to a third-party company who is going to come and tell you whether you're good.
Yes.
That is one thing. The second thing is the board, we have to explain to the board that, as I mentioned in the example, is securing your own product is not enough anymore. Because you are in an internet, it's almost like an internet. You click on a
web.
link.
Yes.
Yeah, you're a World Wide Web. You go there, you click on a link, the link leads to something, you click on five links later, you don't know where you are. You're totally,
Very true.
you don't remember where you started. You don't remember where you started. So in the same way, in the software, it's no longer important that you secure your own software. You have to secure your perimeter. You have to secure your partners. Make sure that partners are not secure. Sorry, you don't have control over securing your partners. You need to have visibility into your partners, what they're doing, how they're handling their profiles. Because at the end of the day, your customers have placed their trust in you. And the last thing you want to do is lose their trust.
Correct.
Because
correct.
If I had, and this other thing that's very important is having a inventory of all the moving parts in your software that you have. Without that, when something gets announced in the internet, the 0 day, every day, practically. When something happens, you should have a very quick way of finding out and reacting to those to see, am I impacted by this or not?
Correct.
If I'm impacted, put a remediation plan right away. And also have, even if you're not impacted, have an answer quickly, because when a customer reads a high profile threat that's been published, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to call you and say, is my data secure? Are you impacted by this? And if you don't have that visibility and quickly you don't have that answer ready, you could lose trust. And once lost,
yep.
it's you can even though people say you can regain the trust, in my opinion, it's lost is almost permanently lost.
Yep.
So that's where I would go back to this board and the C-level execs saying that these are the reasons why we need to invest in security. And why we need not only invest in security. Yeah, again, I'm not a strong believer that you have to build everything on your own. As I mentioned, there are players out there, leverage the players out there.
Yep.
Pick on their strengths and do that. And so that you get the visibility, you know how your profile is, security profile is, and also what is your risk tolerance.
Yes. That's very
important. Without that,
correct, correct. It's interesting that you say this. From the perspective of if we slice it towards the healthcare industry, because obviously, given the position that you are in, you have to think about various standards that apply specifically to the healthcare side of things: QMS, ISMS, HIPAA, various types of things over there. For those types of standard, compliance-based standards, security standards, policy compliance, and all these things that are there, how close how close is third party security, or your making sure that the vendors are safe, how close does this get to the compliance guidance that has been provided by various bodies in the healthcare sector?
Actually, before I go answer the question, let me give a little background on why it's important, especially
Yes.
in this industry. I'm sure every person in different industries says their industry is equally important, and I won't dispute that. But because I'm working in this industry for many years, I can explain.
Yes.
For those of you who don't understand, a pharmaceutical company, from the time a drug formula is conceived or R&D completes to the time the drug hits the market, it can take many years. Depending on the complexity of the drug, it could take up to 20 years for the drug to hit the market. So companies, they go through various testing cycles, and finally human trials is the last phase of the testing. They do the human trials. By the time they come to clinical trials, which is where our software is used, companies have invested millions of dollars and sometimes over $1 billion of money.
Wow.
And the clinical trial can go for years, up to 10 years. You could have a clinical trial running for 10 years to make sure that drug, because at the end of the day, you are actually providing something that could save the lives of humans, or if not tested properly, if something gets compromised, you could actually cause severe damage. So that's the reason. The reason why the clinical trials take so long is because they do the trainings, they capture the results. FDA may not like the results that you see, and they could send it back for retrials. They may have to adjust based on some market conditions, whatever it is. So companies have invested billions of dollars, millions of dollars, and even over $1 billion in getting to that state. So they have a lot of things at stake.
Yes.
So you need to make sure that that trial is very successful. And if there is any compromise of the data, it's a very high possibility that the trial could be invalidated.
Correct.
So companies could lose billions. Some companies can actually, smaller companies could shut their doors if something like that happens, that they don't have the deep pockets to do that. And the other thing is, if it delays because of any issues we run into, somebody else could come and take a market lead.
Yes.
And the first person could capture the market, especially for something as severe as the pandemic that we are going through.
Yes.
The first person who came with the vaccine probably captured a significant market share compared to others.
Second, third, yeah, exactly.
So it's very important for them. For that reason, in industry like ours, it's very, very important. And it's a lot of compliances that we have to stay with. One of the, even the regulatory compliances like CFR Part 11 or the HIPAA, where the patient, then when you come to the regional compliances, you have the GDPR rules that you have to comply with. And then the standard security compliances, the ISOs and the SOCs that you do that. So all these things are extremely important. So companies have a lot at stake.
Yes.
And they trust you with that they rely on you to provide them the best service, so that they can actually, the investment that they have made, they can get the value out of it. So for the reasons in this industry, like any other industries, I'm sure financials, if you go to financials, we would have the same SOX compliance and various things. So these compliance are very tightly mapped with your industry. Like in our industry, the patient privacy is extremely important.
Yes.
In the healthcare and life sciences, because you could have significant penalties from the governments to do that. And in pretty much all industries working with the European countries, you have the GDPR.
Yes.
In the financial industry, you have the SOX compliance will be there. And you have the PCI industry. So all these compliances, even though they're mandated by regulations, they do have a good amount of security aspect to it that you have to comply with.
Wonderful. That is the good.
You're constantly in alignment.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, 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 yes. Um, it's essentially the security, the aspect of security, third-party security, making sure the data that you're transferring is actually kosher, and especially from the perspective that you mentioned, from a privacy-centric angle, whatever you're transferring, is it actually privacy-centric or not? We think we are transferring
absolutely,
whatever it is.
absolutely.
Yeah, is that or
Yeah,
so? Sai, let me ask that for CISOs who might be listening to this, CIOs who might be listening to this, um, what would be your three areas of interest that you would recommend to thought leaders that they should focus on in 2022 as the three areas that you see where investment should go in companies like yours?
that's going to be hard because it's very hard to pick three.
That's true. Oh gosh.
Because by picking three areas, I might be doing disservice to things that somebody might feel that, again, I'll be doing disservice because security, you cannot pick only three out of security.
Agree. A few top areas that are
So
of concern.
one is, as I mentioned early on, with the integrations between applications, because as I said, companies have invested millions of dollars building large enterprise applications, and nobody can, and then they have data running for 15, 20 years. There's no way they're going to get rid of the system. So
Correct.
those monolith, those mega applications that people have invested in 15, 20 years ago are going to stay,
Yes.
and they have to be interconnected.
Yes.
So interconnection, so you have to focus on making sure that when A talks to B and B talks to C and C talks to D, all the data is behaving in the way that you expect it.
Correct.
Is it secure? Is it following your compliances?
Correct.
One example that I can give is, like, for example, you make a call. I'm working in Europe and I'm partnering with another European company, and I make a call to the European company. My data is all staying in Europe, but that partner is
Yes.
calling somebody else, and who's calling someone in US and sending the data.
Exactly.
So I could be in compliance violation of that. So you have to make sure that don't restrict your view to your products only.
Yes.
Go beyond your products. Go outside and look at all your touch points that you're doing.
Yep.
The second area where you to do is have a very good inventory of all your software.
So like an S-bomb.
Yeah, like an S-bomb. As far you want to go as possible, because when the zero day attacks or some high critical vulnerability things come up, get announced, you should be able to react very quickly to that. If you're impacted, you fix them quickly. If you're not impacted, it's equally important to get a message out so that your customers feel comfortable that, and the trust that you earn, the positive or negative transparency that you provide, actually makes the customer believe in you more and they give you more business.
Right.
So these are some areas I would definitely focus on, because as you said, as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to repeat some of those because they're very important, is you cannot let your reputation die.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
And if a customer asks, okay, are you impacted by this particular vulnerability that was announced yesterday, and say, I don't know, then the customer will start putting questions about you.
Exactly.
And the only way you can answer confidently that, yes, I know, is if you have that S-bomb.
Correct.
Otherwise it's going to be. And the same with regulatory. So I spend 30% of my time every day looking at legal languages, legal contracts, and RFPs from customers. And every RFP that I look at has a section on security, has a section on compliance, has a section on the various. So uptime was very important. It still is important, service uptime. But now service uptime is important, but customers can say, you know what, if my server is down for a little bit, I can handle it. But if my data is compromised, I can't handle it. So security is, in my opinion, security is actually taking a much higher importance than a system uptime for customers.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
People are running into this mission critical 24/7 up systems. So the system could be down because the server went down or it got compromised and they can't afford it.
Makes sense. No, and that is that's the perfect way to summarize this. I mean, the whole point of that, what you were talking about, is that MTTR reduction, the mean time to response. That we know we've all been. I mean, you've been in this space for so long. We understand the fact that we can't stop CVEs. Yesterday it was log4j. Tomorrow it'll be log5j. whatever it is, right? I mean, even Log4j, we all know it's the gift that keeps on giving, because every single version that comes by, oh, there's a new vulnerability for that. So you're right about the fact that at the end of the day, do you have that map of what is where for your entire infrastructure? So if I can answer that question, am I affected, am I not affected, I have to provide that answer very
in the
crisply
shortest possible
in
time.
the shortest possible time. Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Just to give an example on, sorry, some small, just to give an example on one of the statements you made earlier is whether the CVS will be there or not. So when I interview candidates for a position in security, I have talked to hundreds of candidates that I interviewed. And if someone says that I have implemented this to prevent attacks, I say, no, you cannot. I'm not going to offer you a job. You cannot prevent attacks. They will be, if you close 5 holes, you get a 6th one.
Correct.
It's like whack-a-mole.
Correct.
It will be there. So what the candidate would answer, I have minimized the exposure.
Yes.
That's right. If somebody says, I have blocked everything, no, it's not humanly possible.
Correct.
So in the same way, CVEs will be there, and all we have to do is continue to plug them, make it harder and harder for the people to get in.
Exactly. It's all that question about raising that bar to a level where somebody who is an attacker understands that the effort to breach the system is so high. I would rather find something else that is worth my time. You're absolutely right about the fact that
Absolutely.
Perfect security is a myth. Like it's yeah.
Actually, the word perfect doesn't exist.
Yes. No, but
just to give another example is like, if you walk on a street,
yes,
and you have 6 homes that have security systems, cameras and everything, 7th home doesn't have a camera, the chances are somebody who wants to break in, they would rather go into that house that didn't have the cameras.
yes.
Because why go through the effort of going through the hoops to break into Fort Knox when I can easily get into something else. So you make it harder for somebody to say, oh, this particular boundary, this particular company, they have done something, it's a little, I can get in. If I'm a smart hacker, I may be able to get in. But is it worth the return? So there are 100 other people who are not as secure as this one. So let me move on. So, and you want to be those people, those companies that hackers will look at you, or whoever wants to take advantage of you, look at you and say, you know what, it's not worth spending my time. Let me move on to somewhere else. So you want to be there. That will reduce your exposure.
Absolutely. Sai, I have to say, like, this has been an amazing call for us, and our viewers are going to love this. I mean, we touched on so many important points, including software development life cycles, the changes that have happened, the critical areas where people can focus on. And I have to say thank you very much for your time and effort. We really appreciate it.
I really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you very much, Sai. Thank you.
Yeah, let me know if you need any further information. I'm always available to talk to you.
Perfect. Thank you, sir.